What is up, everybody? I am back with some actual gameplay from a tournament that I had done on Smash.gg. So it was set up on a Discord server, and I'll actually link to the Discord server below. And so basically what I was doing is playing a deck that is entirely not crafted. So I have yet, so far, since the open beta has released, to craft a single card. This is only on playing and getting the rewards, and I chose Freljord as my first region. I think I'm about 50% done with it. And this deck actually does not even have any Freljord cards in it. So I wanted to basically test and see how far could I make it in, you know, just a random tournament against people with constructed decks. And I'm also trying to see how far I can make it in ranked. The goal with ranked is to get to bronze, and I'll probably be releasing a video on that as well to kind of, you know, how to build a budget deck with ranked. So this deck in particular it's Ionia and Noxus, and the goal with it, honestly, the only goal that I had in mind when creating this deck was to put the best possible collection of cards that I have into play, into a deck. And I say that because obviously without crafting anything, you have a very limited collection of cards. And these cards comprise basically just the strongest cards out of all the cards that I currently own. So my thought process was, obviously, if I have such a short selection of cards to choose from, might as well just put the strongest ones in there. You can see, just to start here, the first two units I play are elusive. And elusive is probably, I don't know, it's definitely a strong stat right now in this game. This deck that I'm playing against, Demacia and Ionia, I'm pretty sure every opponent, I think but one that I played in this tournament, was Ionia and Demacia. And I think the other one was actually Shadow Isles and Demacia. So every single deck I was playing against used a ton of elusive units. And the idea is that they're buffing their elusive units so much that they're just like unkillable. Because there's a certain point where you can't do enough damage to those units to even remove them from the field. The only thing that really counters that is something like a Vengeance from Shadow Isles, or Ruination, or, you know, anything that basically is an AoE, you know, hyper clear. And honestly, there's not a lot of AoE in this game. Freljord does have Avalanche. Again, Shadow Isles does have Ruination. But when you're playing something like what I'm playing an Ionia Noxus deck, you know, I really don't have much removal in this deck, to be honest with you. I do have, I forget the name of the card right now, but it's a 3-cost kill any unit with 3 or less attack. I think it's Culling Strike or something like that. And I do play it a little bit later in this game. That helps with some of the elusive units, especially, you know, this one is a 2/2. You know, Shadow Assassin, it's probably one of the better elusive units in that when you summon it, it draws a card. So it definitely helps with that, but the problem is they usually end up buffing most of their elusive units to 4 or higher attack at some point. And that becomes a problem because then none of those cards really work. So how I was able to actually get around that in most of these games was by stunning them, believe it or not. So the objective, after I played the first round, I basically was seeing, okay, everybody's playing elusive. So my thought was, how do I kill them as quickly as possible? Because obviously if I'm killing them faster than they're able to kill me, then I win the game. And I know it seems like a very easy thing to think, an easy thing to say, but it's a hard thing to do against an elusive deck, because in all reality, if they draw the right combination of elusive units, they're just going to be able to win based on the fact that I can never block their attacks. And they have the choice as to whether or not they block me or let the attacks through, which means they have the upper hand as to whether or not their units actually survive that round, and they can decide whether or not they're going to have enough damage for lethal the next turn. So it's very difficult, and the different stunning mechanics that are used in this deck they're great, to be honest with you. So as we fast forward a little bit in this particular match, there's two things. So you can see in my hand I have one stun card, a Decisive Maneuver, and this paired with this Overwhelm crowd favorite ends up being very strong. So the other thing that kind of supports the whole stun mechanic in this is the Overwhelm mechanic. And essentially what I am playing towards in every single game is making sure that I put myself in the most favorable position to do the most damage every single turn. And Decisive Maneuver, which was kind of off my radar when I first started getting into this game and I started doing card reviews and the top 10 best cards, the top 10 worst cards, and all that good stuff. It didn't seem too great for the cost. There's also only a fast spell, so it can be negated by deny, which I did have to play around a ton in these matchups, which that was really the only difficult part about playing against these decks, was making sure that when I played the spells that would basically swing the game in my favor, it needed to be at a time where I thought they did not have deny. So for that reason, I never really thought Decisive Maneuver was that good, but when it comes down to it, it ended up being incredible. And you can see here too, he had a favorable turn here with the back-to-back, which all the decks were playing back-to-back essentially, and it is a very good card. You give +3/+3 to 2 different allies for the turn. Whenever I played something like Decisive Maneuver, that was very typically their response, was to play a back-to-back. So either I had a deny or I had another buff that I could use to put to still basically negate their +3/+3. So those would sometimes be difficult to play around, but all in all, Decisive Maneuver was great. And we'll actually get to a play, I believe, in the future in one of these 3 games that Decisive Maneuver decisively won me the game. So the first game was actually a defeat, unfortunately. You can see the Culling Strike there that I mentioned earlier, as well as the Twin Disciples. The Twin Disciples actually is very, very good, especially with Zed. It basically allows Zed to not die ever. If you give him +3 attack, the Zed is going to first strike most of the time and be able to survive. And if you give him +3 defense, that basically puts him out of range of any of the removal spells, things of that nature. So all in all, it ended up being a very good card. I wasn't really included in any of the decks that I made when I was crafting back when the beta was open prior to this open beta. As we fast forward a little bit here, you can kind of see, again, all the elusive units. So my opponent playing the elusive units. This one actually teched the Fiora in there as well. The first game when he first played the Fiora, I was kind of concerned about it, and then I quickly realized that I didn't really need to worry about the Fiora. Didn't really seem like his primary win condition. I don't know if he just put it in there as as a tech or something like that. Who knows? But you can see still all the elusive units being played. And one of the good things, and when I was building this deck, when I was, kind of deciding, all right, what are the best possible cards that I have in my collection right now, one of those things was elusive. So I made sure to include elusive units because I knew elusive was inherently just a good stat, a good side effect to have on any one of your units. And not only that, obviously if your opponent is also playing elusive, it allows you to be able to block them. So it's very important that I included those in there. So as we get towards the end of the second game here, a really cool combo came up, and this was super fun. Very, very fun, and I never really thought to use Dawn and Dusk with Darius. Honestly, by playing this deck, and I've been playing it on ladder a lot as well, I have found and discovered far more combos and interactions with cards I probably would not have discovered if I were just playing the typical meta-proven decks. And I think that speaks to this game's diversity. I think there is a ton of different decks that you can play, different ideas you can come up with that I think most people think are underrated at first, but put up against the right opponent, they will wreck. They will do very, very well. So basically, I summon the Sparring Student first because every time a unit is summoned, it gets +1/+1. So Dawn and Dusk is obviously going to summon 2 more copies of Darius, and this is how I win this game right here. I decided, my only concern, I will say, when I played this was obviously if he had a deny. He did have 6 mana, but I made the decision based on the fact that A, he had already played 1 deny previously in the game, so statistically, he was less likely to have 1 in his hand, and B, at that point, it was probably that or I would lose because he did have 2 elusive units on the board, and I had no way of really getting rid of them with what was in my hand. So I either did this now to win or I'd end up losing. And because of Darius's effect, right after I did this, I was calculating in my head whether or not there'd be enough damage. And I'm very excited to find out there was enough damage. Because of the interaction with level ups, certain level ups will happen in the middle of combat. So after this first Darius attacks the Fiora, and because he played tough, after he attacks the Fiora, he's still actually at 11, so the other Dariuses don't both level up. But by the time the second Darius attacks, it triggers the third Darius's level up, gives him the added attack to basically give enough trample damage to, kill the opponent and get him down to 0. So very cool interaction, awesome combo. Very happy I pulled it off. And all in all, it kept me in this series and won me the game and put us at 1-1. So as we kind of skip towards the middle of the third game here, you can see Kinku Lifeblade. So I actually got off to a good start with a lot of aggro stuff in the beginning, getting him down to like 11 or 12 or something. And then the Kinkus came in and ended up boosting him back up. And they were a pain in the butt. And honestly, such a good card, Kinku Lifeblade. Lifesteal, I think, is also super underrated right now. And again, this, I think, just speaks to the diversity of Legends of Runeterra at this time. I mean, for something like, Elusive, something like Lifesteal, Stun, which is what this deck, does so much of, that ended up being so useful for me. All of these effects are having game-changing effects, and I was not expecting that. I mean, when you look at other games like Hearthstone and Magic, there are plenty of things that you don't end up using, or just certain effects that you don't end up using that are on cards. And this just, I don't know, every effect so far has seemed to be very, very useful. So you can see here, in fast forwarding, my focus was really to prevent the Kinkus from being able to strike and get the lifesteal to increase his health. You can see I drew into the Culling Strike again, which definitely helped a ton because I was able to target one of the elusives. So I mentioned earlier that it's very helpful with most of the elusive units because most of them are 3 or less attack. The problem is when they get buffed. So the Culling Strike was pretty useful overall in the deck. The one thing I will say that turned out to be not that useful was the Shen. And I had put the Shen in there basically because my idea was it's a champion, and it was the only other champion I had because I'm not crafting anything, and it just, I don't know, it wasn't good. I wanted to put it in purely because champions are pretty, powerful cards. They're a lot stronger than most other cards, but he didn't, I don't know, just the way he works with the order of, things attacking, it doesn't always give barrier to the person you really want to give it to. I did find out that if he stays not attacking and you attack with, let's say, 3 people, the one all the way to the left will actually end up on Shen's right. It's just really weird how Shen interacts right now with the order of attacks and stuff. So you can see again that this decisive maneuver as well wrecked this guy. I mean, it stunned and prevented him from gaining 5 more life with the Kinku, and then I was able to have my other unit kill his other unit. So very, very good decisive maneuver. Again, I found that using decisive maneuver on the defensive is much better than using it on the offensive. And what would 2 Ionia matchups be without having a deny battle? Considering I played a ton of Ionia matchups throughout this entire tournament, I'm surprised this only happened. I think this was really the only time that this happened. Denying a deny. Actually, sorry, I lie. I think there was twice. This happened one other time as well. But to have, this was the longest chain I had, I think, of 4 spells. And this was awesome. This felt so good. The Culling Strike still went through, which also negated the Detain. So all in all, that was a spectacular play. And put me in a great position to now just have free roam to attack his face. Navori Conspirator is another one that I was not high on whatsoever when I was first reviewing cards. I was dead wrong. I will admit that I was wrong. I apologize. Navori Conspirator is very good, especially with these hand buff decks because you can return the one drop guy that basically gives something in your hand +1/+1, which then will likely buff an elusive unit, and it puts those units again outside of kill range. So Navori Conspirator, very, very good card. And when it is buffed, it already has 3 attacks, so it only needs to be buffed once to put it outside of that 3 attack range. Gives it 4 attack, which becomes very, very difficult for you to deal with. It can also kill somebody in 5 turns. Obviously, 5 times 4 is 20, so becomes a very large threat. Now, having the extra Zed in my hand, I obviously don't have I don't have Zed's champion spell in my deck because I haven't crafted it yet. So now, how this interaction worked also ended up doing wonders for me, and we'll see that here in a second. But first, what I do want to mention is Intimidating Roar. Intimidating Roar, I'd be lying if I said it didn't give me the chance to win a bunch of these games, because it basically stuns, like in this instance you can see it stuns his entire field and it gives me the ability to attack with everybody. The issue is it's not, I don't know, it's a dead draw a lot of the times, mainly because it's a slow spell, and it became difficult for me to really use it in any other way unless I had game. So really the only time I was using it was to kill my opponent. He had a field of 3 or less attack, I stunned the whole field, and I would attack for game. It was a last play of the game card. And for that reason, I don't think it's really going to end up being that great. I did think it was one of the power cards for, Ionia. I think it might still be good in a, obviously a Yasuo deck. If you're stunning the whole field, you're also killing the whole field. So that's yet to be seen. I haven't built that deck yet. But as you can see here with Zed's Shadow Shift, this ended up being ridiculously good and it actually won me the game. He summoned 2 other units to block. One of them, which has lifesteal, which would have definitely allowed him to survive one more turn, which means he's attacking with an elusive field. He would win next game. Being able to recall an ally that had an effect, which in this case is Keeper of Masks. When he's summoned, everybody gets +1 attack. That literally won me the game. So Zed Shadow Shift, I think, is also a very heavily underrated card. And I think it goes to the power of recall for yourself, not to recall your opponent's monsters. So something like Hearthstone always had Sap, and Sap was always heavily played for tempo. You would play it on your opponent's monster, so he would have to pay the mana to then replay that unit. And in this case, this game actually makes it plausible in both scenarios to do your monster or their monster. And honestly, it's probably more useful to recall your own unit, probably 70% of the time from what I saw. In this case, like I said, it won me the game. In his case, in most of these Ionia Demacia decks, they were constantly getting additional, battlecry effects and whatnot. So, what I learned from playing this ridiculous deck of basically just a bunch of random cards that were good is every effect in this game has the potential to have game-changing effects. And I think that as the meta develops, I think people are going to realize that it's not as easy as it might seem to just play a Shadow Isles deck or just play an elusive deck and that's the meta, or just play a control deck. The meta, I think, is going to be very, very, very diverse, and I am very excited to see what it ends up as. All right, and that is it, guys. But before I let you go, what would I be doing if I didn't end this video with a ridiculous Captain Farron play? I was losing this game. You can see clearly he has a much more established field. I have 7 health. He's going to win. But in comes Captain Farron. I almost wanted to say Captain Planet there. And so I attack here. I got the 2 that's going to strike with the elusive no matter what. And the overwhelm on Captain Farron is really what is ridiculous. Shen wasn't really useful at all, but in this particular situation, I think it was hysterical that Captain Farron had a Divine Shield essentially on him, or a barrier, gonna get out of those Hearthstone habits. And obviously I have the Decimate left in my hand now as well. So he takes an additional 4. I have 5 left in my hand to kill him. Now the issue is next turn, obviously, he can attack as well. and I need to make sure that I can block well enough to live. My last draw here is a monster, or is a unit, which is really all I needed, just in case one of those units in his hand, or one of those cards in his hand, is a unit like Cytheria. So the Sparring Student helps. I can block at least both 8/8s. The rest of his field doesn't do 7 damage. And then, as usual with Captain Farron, God, I feel like every time I've drawn this card, he's won me the game. So I leave you with that. I think, honestly, Captain Farron, I just think Captain Farron is just a super underrated card. I think he's actually decent, as much of a meme card as it looks like. He's pretty good. So I hope everybody enjoyed this video. I did end up actually placing 9th in this first tournament with this ridiculous deck. I'm pretty happy with it. Soon I will begin crafting, probably one day soon. Who knows? I am excited to start building some more competitive decks. But for all you people out there looking for something a little on the budget side, don't want to really use any of your crafting stuff yet because you want to save it up for that perfect deck that you're going to build, this is definitely something to look at. Kind of an Ionia Noxus hybrid. Maybe not this deck in particular, but I do think that this version of the deck at least performed decently. So take it for what it's worth. Everybody, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. As always, I will be coming out with a ton more Legends of Runeterra content. Like the video if you thought this was entertaining and you liked the Captain Farron and the Darius plays. I know that was my favorite part of this video. And looking forward to making some more Legends of Runeterra content and entering some more tournaments. Until next time, everybody stay positive and peace out.